I should do the opposite. I should.
If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right.
Yes. I will do the opposite. I used to sit here and do nothing and regret it for the rest of the day. So now I will do the opposite, and I will do something.
High school matters. Come on, let's talk about it. Welcome to High School Matters, the podcast dedicated to conversations that I have with my former high school students. My name is Randy Appel, and I've been teaching high school since the year 2000. And I want to thank you for joining me in continuing the George W. Hewlett High School discussions. My conversation today is with Eric Relkin. Eric and I were not friendly in high school. However, we did share a particular bond over a certain class and teacher that may sound familiar to some of our regular listeners. Eric was a year older than me, and most of my memories of him in high school revolve around him being just a funny guy. As you will hear, we have sort of reconnected in recent years through an odd series of similar interests and similar obsessions. We're not exactly friends, but after this discussion, I'm thinking that maybe we should be. This interview delves deep into the question of how we choose to handle learning from the mistakes of our history so that we're not doomed to repeat them. Eric draws from a pretty familiar sitcom as he shares his strategies for avoiding the mistakes of his parents. Eric also paints a detailed picture of the complicated nature of Hewlett High School as he takes us through his own high school experience, one in which he says had a very profound effect on his entire life. I hope you enjoy this episode of High School Matters. Well, we're here.
This is quite a journey.
The location of this conversation is probably as random as our post-high school relationship.
It's a perfect fit.
So before we start, why don't you explain both where we are, how we got here, and our relationship?
So where we are, we're up at Camp Blue Ridge. My wife works at Trails End. My kids go to Trails End. Being here to do this podcast is super strange in the framework of our relationship because our relationship actually makes no sense. Of all the podcasts that you've done, this is by far and away the least logical connection that I could possibly think of, and I think you'd probably agree.
Fully, yes.
So I think the origin of us really is we were not friends at all in high school.
At all.
So we met when I was, I think, a senior in perhaps the most incredible classroom engagement I've ever had in my life, and I could ever imagine anyone else having.
Me too.
Which was Mr. Cleave's Business Law 1. And
Business Lore, sorry, LAWR with a capital R. That was the most incredible class on the planet. It was essentially a television show with all of the storylines in the same room at the same time. So we'll get to Mr. Cleave's class later, but
good.
So continue our...
So that was literally it.
Right.
So we had that class, no other intersection whatsoever other than friends in common.
We just laughed together in that class. And then you went off to college, and then that was it.
And the connection, the reconnection that I remember, which again makes zero sense, was when I got into intermittent fasting and you were peppering me with questions. I'm like, let me send you some information. I sent you the information, and you actually have some degree of science background with your biology and chemistry, and you could actually understand more of it than I could. And that was literally the beginning of what became 648,000 text messages on every single topic that could relate to society.
That's a great intro, because that's exactly how I remember it as well. The one thing I will say is that it comes up in this conversation, these podcasts a lot, and I'm sure you hear about this all the time, the negatives of social media. But there is a positive of social media, and it relates to this relationship that developed. You're we'll call it a serial poster. And sometimes when people are serial posters, they get annoying.
Listen, me being annoying is completely understanding. There's no one who understands that more than I do.
But I never found you annoying. I was always engaged with your posts. Again, we didn't know each other well, so I just messaged you. Tell me a little bit more about intermittent fasting. And that's where our relationship started.
And a 14-year remote relationship like pen pals.
Well, right, because I think when I saw you today for the first time, I had not seen you since 1993.
That's correct. It's 32 years, which, again, talking about the randomness and the fact that this makes no sense.
And here we are at Camp Blue Ridge because you live in Florida, I live in New York.
Yep.
I wanted to do this for a while because in the 640,000 text messages we sent each other since our intermittent fasting introduction, you have talked about the podcast.
Yep.
We've talked about like high school, even before the podcast.
100%.
Things just came up, I think, because of Mr. Cleve. So
It all comes back to Mr. Cleve.
it does all come back
He's
to
the
Mr.
genesis.
Okay.
I do have a bone to pick with you about who's the biggest fan of the podcast.
Well-
I think from a durability standpoint and a contribution standpoint, I mean, if there's going to be a T-shirt distributed, I'm going to make my case that I should get the T-shirt. But we can get to that.
You are a very big podcast fan, and you've also, more than just a fan, you give me a lot of advice, which I actually made, and I've changed, and we'll talk about that as well.
I can't wait.
Great intro. Now we can get started. Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you excited?
Of course I'm excited.
Tell me why.
Because the anticipation of this conversation and again the absurdity of our relationship, but at the same time, like I was thinking about it, there's a lot of mirroring in the kids that you brought on from Great Neck to what we experienced at Hewlett. So I thought that listening to that was almost like a cast call of people we went to high school with.
One of the things I think is interesting, and it never came up on any podcast before, but maybe this is a good segue and way to introduce it, is the similarities between Hewlett High School
Yes.
and Great Neck.
100%. And I don't know if that's still the case now, but when I listened to the kids that you brought on, I knew a kid like that. I knew a kid like that. I knew a kid like, there were so many people where I was like, I know, I can picture who that person is.
Right. So while Kenny Eisenstein couldn't explain Hewlett High School because he
Just
blocked it out,
solely focused on Kelly Aaron's boot.
why don't you explain, because I think I've done a good job explaining Great Neck.
Yeah.
But why don't you, as best you can, simply just explain Hewlett High School?
Hewlett High School, when we were there, was, I don't know how it is now, but a very affluent high school, in my opinion, made up of different levels of social capabilities, social function, highly intellectual high school with really accomplished kids. Like some of the kids, and I'm sure you went to Michigan. Some of the kids that I went to high school with, went to MIT, Harvard, literally every big school you could think of. We sent kids there, and we had a very small class. My graduating class, I think, was like 198 or 200.
Yep.
We sent dozens of kids to Ivy League schools. So definitely affluent, incredible educational environment. Really offered, I think the best experience anyone could hope for for an educational experience. And at the same time, the other side of it was the social aspect, which I think was far more complicated than the educational aspect. And that was navigating a very affluent environment where kids are at all different levels of advancement in terms of social capabilities, in terms of economic situations. And that mix, I think, is far more complicated than the educational mix.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting about Hewlett is there were people that lived in very affluent areas, very wealthy areas.
Harbor, Woods, all those areas. But Valley Stream and where I lived.
And then, you lived in Valley Stream?
I lived in Hewlett over by Grant Park. I was on the border of Hewlett and Limbrook.
But the range was very large.
Crazy.
And I think that is a good thing in some ways, because I think it exposes all bubbles, so to speak, to each other. But it also could be a bad thing. And
yeah, so I think in an environment like that, I think it depends where you sit. It's like everything else. I think it depends on where your seats are in the stadium. Like if you sit in the upper deck, you may not feel so great about the stadium. If you're sitting behind home plate, you think the stadium's great. And I think that sort of environment can be challenging depending on where you're seated. And that's not to say that kids from affluent families didn't have problems that we had. That's completely insane. I know for a fact that there were plenty of people that lived in the harbor or lived wherever that had really, really troubled backgrounds, really troubled families. And they have every human struggle that everybody else has. It's just a different perspective because there are also, while you have those struggles, there are other things they may not worry about.
Right.
But dealing with that was certainly interesting. And I think, again, depending on where your seats are, really kind of dictates how you feel about the mixed nature of the economic statuses within the school.
So where were your seats?
My seats were in the upper deck for sure. I was probably closer to the lights than
Oh, really?
Yeah. And this is not a woe is me, wow, you're the poor kid at the rich school. Like that's not it at all. Like I had zero issues socially. I had my friend group, which was kind of varied. I was kind of all over the map in terms of friends, but I had my core group of guys that I spent most of my time with. They were all above me financially, but at the same time, that was like among us, that was never, ever a discussion. It was never a factor in our lives, except for the fact that I didn't have a car, which caused some problems occasionally. But I mean, again, wah. This is hardly like, oh my God, let's start a GoFundMe. But it does, like when you're, I think the difference is now when you're looking back on it, I'm 50, it's very easy to analyze that and take a look and say, all right, well, this is what it was, and this is what I gained from it. When you're 16 or 15 or 17 going through it, it's a totally different perspective, because you do look around, you're like, hey, 50 kids have this and I don't. You kind of, you do think about it.
So, okay, so let's get back to not now how it affected you, but how you felt at the time back in 89 to 93.
Yeah, I mean, going through the school, you had all ranges, and I mean, I think it's hard for most people from Hewlett or Great Neck or Roslyn or Jericho, wherever, they'll understand it completely because they're living it. But I think going through it, like if you look at it globally, like Hewlett, any of these schools, they're in the top 1% of whatever the childhood experience would be. I mean, they just are. Parking lots filled with BMWs and Mitsubishi 3000 GTs and Dodge Stealths and Jeep Wranglers and every car any human being would ever want as an adult.
Right.
The kids had as kids, and that was absolutely fascinating to me, because I knew that was never going to be me as a kid, but at the same time, it gave me some aspirational goals where I looked at it and said, these kids have BMWs at 17 or 18, and that's great. Like the girl that I dated in high school had a BMW. Like there was never a moment, she never made me feel lesser for a moment about the fact that I didn't have it.
Did you ever invite it to your house?
Yes.
So was your house small?
I had an apartment. It was small, but we didn't spend no one ever spent a lot of time, just because we didn't have the real estate that my friends had at their houses, and it wasn't the most convenient because I was on the edge of town. Oh. So there was nothing convenient about being at my place. Did we have times where we spent there? Did we watch fights there? I remember we watched one of the one of the Holyfield Foreman fights. We got pay-per-view, and I was so psyched that people were coming over and we were going to do a pay-per-view event. My mom was like, yeah, we're going to do this. I'm like, great, this is amazing. Wow. And it happened one or two times, but again, that stuff like that never really. I understood why things were the way they were. So my friends who had houses in Woodmere or wherever, they were just better places to hang out. I never took that stuff personally, and I kind of looked at it as, these are notes I'm going to take mentally because I want to create something more when it's my turn.
Okay, so it may have been less convenient, but you didn't feel that you didn't want them at your house.
My friends never, this was never a discussion. My friends were never of the mindset, I never heard it. I'm not saying it didn't happen or they didn't talk about it when I wasn't there, right. But I never felt uncomfortable around my friends for one moment. I can't adequately articulate how amazing some of the parents were, because I grew up, my parents were divorced. I was in a single family household. My mom worked. My brother and I didn't get along when I was younger, and now we're super, super close. But when we were younger, it's just tough.
He's older or younger?
He's 3 years older than me.
So your parents were divorced. You lived with mom?
Yep.
And where did dad live?
In Connecticut.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and we had a good relationship, or as good a one as you could have. We were actually fairly close considering how often we saw each other. But my friends were really good people, and their families were so accommodating to me needing a ride or whatever. And these were I had friends with parents who were 2-family households, working teachers, really hardworking, grinding people who were so happy to accommodate because they knew my mom was working or whatever. Sunday night came around, they're like, hey, why don't you stay for dinner? And what's interesting about that is, as you take that lens as a parent now and you flip it, it really influences how you feel, because when you talk to your kids and they start talking about situations with kids and stuff like this, we're the first people to reach out and say, hey, listen, if somebody needs something, let's help out if we can. Or let's go, if somebody needs a ride, whatever people need, we will bend over backwards to help people, because that's what happened to me.
So you felt that, and you pay it forward. Okay.
100%.
So when did your parents get divorced? Just to go back to that.
I think 82, somewhere around. I was 7 or 8.
Okay.
And it was in Connecticut, and
you lived in Connecticut.
We lived in Connecticut at the time, and I think it was it was when the first person to get Atari, you're like, wow, Atari was amazing. I think my parents were among the first parents to get divorced in the 80s that I had ever heard of. And I was like, wow, that is not a prize that I really want.
Do you remember your home before they got divorced?
Yes.
What about the relationship between your parents, your brothers?
Terrible, all of it. I can't remember one happy collective time as a family. 0.
Up to 7.
Up to 7 or 8. Literally not one. My parents how they got married, I have no idea. But they got married, and I'm sure they were happy at one point. And then when it unraveled, it was It was my parents' divorce was like the textbook case of everything you should never do as a divorced couple. Get your kids involved, put them in the middle, talk through them to each other. It was like...
Can you be specific? Can you give me an anecdote that you dealt with at that age?
So we were living in Connecticut. Yes, I can. So we were living in Connecticut at the time. They had sold the house and they were living in different locations. And my mom had made the decision to move to Long Island. So moving from Stratford, Connecticut to Long Island is like moving from Earth to like Neptune. It's just two totally different worlds. There's like 7 Jews in Stratford and like all of the Jews are in Long Island. So while they were going through that conversation, like I believe there was a lawsuit of some kind or some kind of injunction to prevent my mom from taking us that far away because Connecticut, like it's a long distance. And we would stay with my mom and my mom would make her points. And then we would go to dinner with my dad and he would make his points. And you could tell, I can even remember this now, I could tell he was making the points so that we would go back and relay them to my mom. And it's hard for me to blame them per se because it's a tough situation. But at the same time, like I'm a parent now. How do you not know better? Right. And I think they were doing the best they could. And I just think they probably should have done better. Again, this is the life lessons that form your path. To me, like my life is a textbook case of seeing things done, let's call it less than perfectly, and saying, I'm going to do the exact opposite of that and see how it turns out. It's like everything comes back to Seinfeld. If everything you've done has always been wrong, then the exact opposite would have to be right. That's like, I was living Seinfeld before I even found it.
Do you remember how you felt as a 6-year-old kid?
Horrific.
But what does that mean? Be specific.
Like just having no sense of belonging, having no sense of like, when is this going to end? It's almost like being in a storm that will never cease. And and I don't mean to, like, this is not like, I was on the verge of killing myself. Like, I just remember feeling so confused about, like, everything else is normal for everyone else. Can this just be normal for 5 minutes? And the answer for years was absolutely not.
How did you deal with that, though? That's heavy.
I don't think I did, to be honest with you. I'm someone who just kind of makes do and survives. Like, if there's ever some sort of apocalyptic event, I'll be one of the last ones to go. I'll just figure out a way to get where I need to go.
So this situation prepared you for that in a way.
I think so. Because like my parents were too tied up in what they were doing. And again, like living a single life as a parent in the 80s is really tough for both of them. And like they were both pissed, rightfully so, about a lot of stuff between both of them. I don't think they were emotionally there enough to help us through it, nor do I know if they had the means to do it. So I just kind of, I really spent a lot of time taking notes about making sure that this would never happen to me. Like I remember going to a psychologist, like my parents brought me to a psychologist at some point.
At 7?
I don't remember how old I was, but it was definitely during the process. And I don't even remember what the reasoning was, but like they put you, like they sit and they talk to you, and like I was pretty shut down because what 7 or 8-year-old wants to talk to an adult who isn't their parents, and they're asking me all kinds of weird questions. And then they put you through like these intelligence tests, and like they have you do puzzles and all this stuff. And like I remember the outcome being some degree of he's really, really smart. He's not going to talk about this. I don't know what to tell you. And that's basically what happened. And I've never had a moment where like I've blown up about it because it's so like to me it's so dead and gone. I just don't care. Like I have a life to live. Like we've built a great nest in our house. Everything else needs to stay away from me. It does, like nothing else matters.
You were not close with your brother, you said at that time?
Not as a kid, and I think a lot of that has to do with every time we moved was the worst time for him. Like we moved right before middle school, then we moved right before high school. I think he got uprooted right before, like he could never set his roots, and he never got that long run because he's 3 years older than me. So I was in 3rd grade in Stratford, so he was moved in 6th grade. Oh. And then we moved again when I was in 5th. I came into 5th grade. He was a year ahead, so he moved into Hewlett into high school. So like no middle school, no grounds, no roots, no nothing. So sorting yourself out in high school is not easy.
But you and him never had any. You never bonded over your mutual hatred, or not hatred, but you know what I'm saying? Challenges.
So I don't remember it that way. I almost feel like we were like in our own isolation for like we were just trying to figure things out on our own because things were so weird for so long. And I don't know, I actually don't have a reason why we didn't get together on that. I really don't.
Okay, you're 7, your parents get divorced, you then move to Long Island.
I moved to one other place in Connecticut, which was terrible, and then we moved to Long Island when I was in 5th grade.
How was it not seeing your dad? Like, what was the situation like?
So I think I saw him like every other weekend, but like if I had a sporting event or something, he would try to do his best to make it down.
Huh.
It wasn't great, but it becomes like you get used to what's consistent. Like you just grow used to things. And whether it's good or bad, like I had friends come up with me on the weekends to go see my dad.
Oh,
like
you'd go to him?
Yeah, I would go to him.
How would you get there?
He would come down and drive me. Like he would drive from Connecticut on like a Friday afternoon, pick us up. We'd sit in traffic for, I don't know, what felt like 3 days. Go up there Friday, Saturday, and come back Sunday night. And sometimes like a friend came with us, and it was like, it was just, that's what my life was. And then eventually it became complicated because when you become a teenager, you have 1,000 things better to do than sit in a car for 4 or 5 hours on a weekend. And I'm sure that was a complicated issue for my dad to deal with. Like looking back at it now, you're a teenager and you want to do what you want to do, but at the same time, it's kind of selfish.
Kind of selfish of
me to like miss weekends with my dad because I want to like hang out with my friends or like, do whatever we do as teenagers.
Do you think of that as selfish?
I think looking back now, yes. Then you don't think about anything. You're just, as a teenager, all you're thinking about is what are you going to do with your friends? Are there going to be girls there? Like that's all you're thinking about. Like what time
But
is
isn't
it?
that what you should be thinking about as a kid?
100%. But at the same time, to not be able to balance the feelings of your parents who are the only reason you're alive, it's easy for me to judge that now. As a teenager, I'm not sure many teenagers have that sort of awareness to know that that's what you should be doing. But yes, your point, like my focus should be on being a kid. And I think that's probably why my parents didn't get into like our, World War VIII over that, because letting us be us, and my brother too, my brother had established his own path too, tearing us out of our friends' situations. So yeah, you're right. It is what I should have been doing. At the same time, like there's a degree of selfishness, like I'm just not going to see my dad.
But your dad and mom, and I don't know them, so this is just, I'm just
call
thinking
them after the podcast.
They put you in this situation.
Yeah, listen, it's the dynamic that was set up. It's not perfect. We made it work. Like I still have a good relationship with my dad today. I still have a good relationship with my mom. Like it definitely stressed our relationship then, but it didn't prevent us from having, like, I hear people all the time, like, I don't talk to my mom, I don't talk to my dad. Like, that was never a thing for me, ever. Like, never.
All right, so you moved to Hewlett. You're now in 5th grade. You're now surrounded by Jews. That felt comforted to some degree.
Definitely.
Annoying on the weekends, you were going home.
Sometimes, yeah.
Then you go to middle school. Any interesting things happen in middle school worth talking about?
I mean, the biggest thing, which was kind of a real dark moment for all of us, was when Kelly Tinez was killed.
Oh, that was your year.
Yep. Yeah. That was March of, I think, 87 or...
It's incredible to think that something like that happened to our school where I was a 7th grader.
Unthinkable.
You were an 8th grader.
Yeah.
And someone was like brutally murdered.
Awful.
And
so awful.
We talk about this, and I hope that nobody is offended by the fact that we're talking about this. I imagine.
Oh, it was awful.
I think the memory should be.
Oh my God! Of course, she was such a sweet girl, and so, oh my God, I can see her face, I can see her energy.
Like you remember her to this day.
Oh my
clearly.
God, distinctly.
Tell me about her, because I didn't know.
So
her.
I didn't know her well. I never saw her not smiling, and I never saw her not bouncing from friend to friend to friend. She was one of the most positive kids I ever saw. And I'm not like, I have no connection to the family, none of it. I just remember seeing she was always smiling or laughing. It was like, all the girls that were close with her, they all talked about her so passionately. And when they talked about her, I knew exactly what they were talking about. Like I didn't know it firsthand because I wasn't, like, I was friendly with her, but I wasn't friends with her. But that was brutal. I mean, that was a
story
nightmare.
gave me nightmares as a kid. Of course, I mean, how could it not give anyone? But how did it impact you?
Legitimate nightmares. Just the whole concept of what you said, like something like that happening in Hewlett seemed unimaginable. Like when something unimaginable
Why don't you
happens,
explain what actually happened, and then we could
so
talk about...
she lived next door to her neighbor next door killed her. The older brother, I think at the time he was like 20 or something like that. She wound up going from her house to his house, whether there was a phone call made to lure her over there or whatever, and something happened, whether the details don't matter.
No,
but,
I know
but
that.
the older brother murdered her and hid her body, and then he was like arrested a few days later, and it like tore the town and the block apart. Like it was brutal, really, really brutal. Like kids were genuinely traumatized. I remember the funeral. It was the saddest thing ever, and I actually wound up, this is a bizarre connection, but I actually wound up testifying in her trial.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
So the younger brother, he and a couple of other kids, I don't want to mention the other kids'
Sure.
names. I was playing basketball with a bunch of my friends, and they happened to come up on the court the day of where we were playing, and there was clearly something wrong with them, whether they were intoxicated or whatever. Like they were dicks. And
They were dicks at that time, or they were always dicks?
Yes. The answer to that question is yes.
Okay.
So they were playing basketball with us. They were kind of bullying us. They were older than us. So I was able to pinpoint the time where they were when we were at the court. And so there was some talk about whether he was involved or not, the younger brother, and whether he was or was, I have no idea. But I was able to pinpoint their time and not necessarily provide an alibi, but provide a framework of where they were when to see where they might have been, like, and even to the point where I could tell you the direction they came from to the court, which would have indicated that they had just come from his house.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's got to be somewhat traumatic.
I didn't feel it was traumatic. I can tell you what sweater I was wearing. It was terrible for the trial, but it was intimidating. I mean, to be on a stand, and that was a packed courtroom. Like that was a really hotly contested.
That was probably the biggest story to ever. I mean, sadly, to ever come out of Hewlett.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, I remember crying about that for weeks.
And you were on the stand of that trial. I mean, and that was before trials were televised. That was like
thank God.
Right.
That would have been like they referenced, because I was younger. I think I was 13 or 14. They referenced me in an article in Newsday, and it was like my parents were like pretty concerned about the whole thing. I don't know why. Like I don't know what would have happened to me. Like, but
well, you were on trial. You were in a murder trial.
Yeah, I guess if my kids were called today to go to a murder trial, I'd be concerned. So I guess I understand why. But yeah, honestly, it didn't really affect me. The incident affected me far. Like I really didn't even care about the trial. The whole idea that a child could be murdered in that sort of environment was just devastating on every scale. Thinking about what the parents went through and the siblings, it was such a disaster. And you're right. I think that was by far and away the worst thing that I've ever heard to happen in Hewlett. And it's still an issue today. Like when he comes up for parole,
right?
It's like the Band-Aid gets ripped right off for everybody.
How about for you when that happens? Because I see it all on Facebook.
I always write a letter.
To keep him in jail.
Yep, 100%. Because somebody needs to be held responsible for that, because she was she was such a sweet kid. She was 13 or 14. I think it was right before her 14th birthday that she was murdered. Somebody needs to be held responsible for that. And if I can, I don't know what sort of impact my letter has, but it's the least I can do.
So for anyone that wants to get involved, what do? You write a letter to who?
So somebody on Facebook there's usually 3 or 4 girls who kind of spearhead it. And they put up the link to write to the parole board, and you just fashion a letter. It's super easy to do.
And he's still in jail, and
I believe he's still in jail, but I think he comes up for parole once every 2 years.
And he got a life sentence?
I think he got 25 to life, and they keep talking about letting him out, and then the barrage of letters must be ridiculous.
Oh, it's nice that people still rally around.
Oh yeah, I mean that's how could you not? If you're not rallying around that, what are you rallying around?
Right. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was rough, and I didn't remember that was your year. As a dad, has that impacted you to this day, other than writing letters to the board, or just as a father of kids and how you treat them and how you let them do things? I feel like all of us at that time became much more concerned about, should you ride a bike alone? Should you, that was impactful. So
100%.
How did that impact you as a father?
When kids start driving, in Florida, they start driving at 11.
Right.
No, I think it's 16 for a license, which I think is nuts.
Insane.
But we've had so many conversations with my son around the dangers of driving and honking at people and giving people the finger and stuff like that. Putting yourself in an equation of who has more to lose. And that's a big thing for me. Whatever you're involved in, you need to take a look at the situation. And is it really worth giving the finger to the guy in the pickup truck who definitely has 4 guns in his truck instead of just calming down and taking it easy? So
right.
to kind of answer your question, how did that situation influence? I just need my kids to come home alive. And I talk to them about that openly, stuff the biggest danger for me is driving and pills, because kids go out, they party, they do whatever. Never take a drink from anyone. We've had that conversation 600 times. And no matter what someone says, say, oh, I take this for ADHD. It's no matter what. If something happens and you don't come home, our lives are changed forever. That's part of the decision. So don't. And they're terrified, which is perfectly fine with me.
You want to give them that kind of anxiety.
Fear
you.
is a driver.
Great motivator. Okay. I definitely didn't expect to talk about that.
And it's something, from a Hewlett perspective, every single kid who is in the sphere of that probably remembers exactly what happened.
100%.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
Still.
Okay, so it's tough to transition from that, but if we can, staying in middle school before we get to high school, is there anything else in middle school that was impactful about being in a new school without friends? Like, how did that transition happen? Like,
going to middle school was interesting because in Woodmere Middle, it was the blending of two schools. It was Ogden and Hewlett coming. Like that was two rivers coming together.
Oh, so it's nice because a lot of people don't know each other when they come into Woodmere Middle School. So that gave you an advantage to, or at least put you on a level playing field with the rest of the group.
Absolutely. Okay. And it brings new people into the equation and a lot of interesting characters. And it sharpens your social skills because you're out of your comfort zone of fifth grade was, you're in your fifth grade bubble of how, the 4 classes, all those kids. Now you got to go deal with a whole bunch of different kids and prove yourself on the field and academics and all that stuff. And I think the maturity gap begins in middle school. Like the fast crowd starts emerging, I think, in middle school. Whereas fifth grade, sixth grade, it doesn't really happen. 7th and 8th grade, like people start migrating toward, you can tell who's gonna break the rope first. For whatever that might be, whether it's drinking or all of the fun that comes in high school, you can start to see who's racing toward what, and I think that's where the social separation really starts, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like you have groups start breaking off and kind of forming your own world. So I think that's kind of like double A before you get to the majors, where I would call high school the majors. And
it worked for you.
I actually really enjoyed middle school. I thought middle school was great.
Okay, so if you enjoy it, then it's not worth talking
about.
Right,
it sucks. It's boring. Everything was good. So and it wasn't like everything was great, but I there was nothing that stuck out to me where I was like, oof, I don't know about that.
Okay. So now we're gonna get to high school now, and
because it matters.
Because it does matter. Middle school matters too, but
high school really matters.
Yeah. So I have a couple of memories of you in high school. You were one of the funniest guys I ever met. So even though we weren't friends, that class with Mr. Cleve showed me that I could actually enjoy class with people that were not just in my grade.
That's right. That class was the most incredible. Like the fact that he didn't bring a gun to school and kill us is incredible, or strangle us, or like throw the projector at us. I honestly can't believe he didn't do that.
So let's use that class as a segue into high school, even though that's the end of your high school.
That's the end of my high school.
I think after that last, transition from sad and morose to this, you texted me after my conversation with Dave, and you said you did not do a good enough job explaining Mr. Cleve's class. And you're right, we didn't.
You did not. You absolutely did. I was listening, I'm like, when? No, it never happened. And the podcast ended. I'm like, oh my God, how did they not get into it?
So why don't you use this opportunity to explain Mr. Cleve, and I think you can never talk enough about Mr. Cleve.
No, never. Cleve was I view him as like a tormented soul. He's somebody who was so passionate about business law, and it was so incredibly boring. I don't know how it's possible for someone to make a topic as boring as he made business law. Now, at the same time, I'm not sure how enlightening it could have been, but his entire class was him writing things and showing things on the overhead projector and just going through terms, and every single story and fabricated discussion about a concept was related to Perkins or Jenkins or the most random names anyone could ever... Like, it was never Steve or Bob. It was like just random last names of guys who would drive trucks. That's what he used to tell his stories. And for some reason, I found that so funny. I literally could not get over it. And to the point today where I see things, like if I ever see Perkins and Jenkins in anything, I immediately start laughing, and Mr. Cleve's head pops into my mind. It was incredible. Yes. I mean, it's the most indelible high school class without question.
So, do you remember specific moments and memories of that class other than those general things? Like,
I remember. I remember a bunch of things. I remember Judd literally slept every single day the entire class.
Okay.
He was toward the door by the chalkboard on the side, unconscious. He probably got an A in the class, even though he literally never paid attention to one thing.
Okay.
And it was me, you, and Ronnie were kind of like running the triangle offense in Cleve's class to see if we could get him to kill one of us.
Which
but
is
it was
interesting because I was the younger kid. I didn't know any of you guys.
None of us.
But yet we somehow connected
Yeah.
over this mutual desire to torment this one man.
This poor guy, I really should send him something. It was so incredible, and his reactions were so bizarre. It was almost like a tea kettle boiling, where you could see it coming up, and you could tell, you could like almost set a clock. We're like, okay, I'm about a comment away from getting an absolute epic explosion, and it drove me absolutely bananas. Like, there was one time he threw me out. I literally didn't even say anything. He just threw me out of class. I was looking around like, are you, like, I didn't even say anything. He's like, I don't care, get out. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going. And there was one time I sat on the other side toward the window, and I think you were toward the middle, and Ronnie, I think, was behind me. How he even allowed us to sit in the same vicinity was beyond me. But one time the windows were open. It was like April or May. It was really hot. And a car alarm went off, and we all went, oh, and made that cleave gesture. And he literally, we all did it. Literally 10 people did it. And he literally exploded on me and told me he was going to throw me out. I'm like, he's sleeping. Everyone else did the exact same thing. Why is that my fault? It's not my car. And he just could not handle it, and I do not blame him in the slightest.
Why do you think he picked on you in many
I
cases?
asked for it. Hang on a second. This is not a victimless crime. So there were instances where he tossed me for no reason at all, but that was like time served at that point. Like,
Right.
I had earned my ticket to like Dean Edwards or
Right.
Principal Robbins' office, whatever. He just wanted me out of the class. Like, he could have been like, hey, you could go to the moon, just get the hell out of here. And I totally understand. If I could transport myself back to like one experience in high school,
No question about it.
undoubtedly it's that class.
Yeah,
it's that class.
That's a memory I take forever.
You were the third-ranked agitator in the class by far.
Oh, and then I had him the following year
It's incredible.
with my other friends.
I can't believe he allowed you in the class.
Well, the first day of that next year, this is a true story. It's college accounting. I think I failed the class because I didn't even care about the class. All I cared about was being in that class and wreaking havoc.
Well, you had seen the blueprint,
Right. So the next year, it's the first day of class. He reads the list and he's reading names.
He must have been like, "Oh my God, kill me."
He's like, Randy Appel. I said, hey, Mr. Cleve, how was your summer?
Yeah.
Starts screaming at me, get out.
See, but it's not just me.
But first day of class. So I was thinking about, like, he was probably...
How's your summer? Get out. Okay.
So if you think about the psychology there, right? Like, he obviously was... one of the things as a teacher you do is you try to set the tone on day one.
He set the tone, firing you to the moon.
Right. So in his mind, he was coming out strict. This is not going to happen this year. I'm going to show him. Meanwhile, the other 25 kids in the class were probably like, what the hell is going on? This guy just got thrown out of the class for saying, hey, Mr. Cleve, how was your summer?
So don't ask him anything ever or he'll murder you.
So it was an incredible experience. That whole year was incredible. All right, so that's kind of like our introduction.
Yeah.
Now we can go backwards in high school. So you get to high school now. Anything in particular? Did you have good feelings about high school? Do you have...
I have mostly positive feelings about high school, and I was thinking about it. High school for me kind of gets halved. So 9th and 10th grade was an experience, and 11th and 12th grade they're just two totally different experiences.
In what
and
way?
It kind of connects to the pacing of like the fast crowd emerging in 7th and 8th grade. That continues and accelerates, I think, in 9th and 10th grade. Mm-hmm. And some people are not ready for that, and I don't personally think I was ready for that. Like the first time I drank was in college.
Why did you not want to drink? Why did you...
I don't actually have a good reason. I really don't. I don't know if I just wasn't ready for it or like... I was just, I wasn't a perfect kid, but I was a pretty good kid. Like, I really did, other than getting thrown out of several classes, I really didn't do anything negative or wrong. Like, I just wasn't a rule breaker. That just wasn't who I was.
Okay.
And
So you felt like drinking would have been breaking a rule or doing something mischievous.
It just felt out of character for me. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't go out on Halloween and, like, throw eggs at people's houses and stuff like that.
You did that.
I did, of course. But, like, stuff like that, it just, I don't know. It was unfamiliar. I didn't really have, like, I didn't have a connection with my parents or my brother to have discussions about stuff like this. So, like, there was nobody to kind of bounce stuff off of, like, that I felt comfortable with. And it just wasn't part of my life. Like, my friends didn't either.
Your friends didn't either?
9th and 10th grade, not really. Like, I definitely had friends that did, but most of my friends did not. Like, I didn't go to house parties. Like, that was not the way I spent my time.
Okay. How did you spend your time?
Playing sports, watching sports. Like my friends, like we would set our clocks to watching like Knicks games. Like when the Knicks were playing the Bulls or the Pacers in the 90s, that was the first thing that we cared about.
Okay.
Like we were just totally into sports, playing sports.
Pretty healthy.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I have vivid memories sitting at a friend's house watching like the dunk contest, like with 20 guys when the dunk contest mattered.
Right.
Knicks games and like just collapsing in pain when they lost and stuff like that. Like I have vivid memories of stuff like that. And it's super formative because I've now indoctrinated my kids where like that's something that we love, and my wife just sits around and watch us be lunatics because like she doesn't really care, but she wants good things for us. But she gets to watch it almost as a spectator sport to watch us lose our minds.
That's great. All right, well, and that started in high school in many ways.
It actually started before then. Actually, the beginning, kind of an interesting story, maybe corny. The reason I became a Yankee fan is my grandfather was a huge Yankee fan, and he was blind. So he used to listen to the games on the radio. I mean, he goes back to like DiMaggio and Ruth and like all the great Yankees of all time. He was blind, so he would listen to the game, and I would watch the game. And so, like, if a big play happened or something happened, he would call me or I would call him to describe what happened.
It's not corny at all.
It just depends on,
Well, it's meaningful, actually.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was absolutely formative. And, like, now, like, I've been an obsessed Yankee fan all the way through the trials and tribulations of the 80s and disasters.
Some of my favorite memories. I'm not a huge sports guy, but my son is in particular. And some of my favorite memories are being at a Knick game or watching Knick games with him, and I get it for sure.
It's a huge connection. It's awesome.
Great.
I love everything about it.
So you watch sports, didn't drink much. Tell me what happened from 9th and 10th, and then when you transitioned to 11th.
Yeah,
and
so
12th.
I think 11th and 12th was like I wasn't short, but like I think I was on the later side of just physical growth.
Like late bloom.
Yeah, and I started to take my take fitness seriously, and like I had never really worked out, and then I started working out in like probably like 11th and 12th grade and really took it seriously. And it really transformed my personal confidence for sure. Like I was never really lacking for confidence, but it was more like kind of made up. But physically, I just, I started to feel really good about myself in like 11th and 12th grade for the first time in a long time.
Interesting. So, I mean, I just had a conversation about my high school experience, and I talked a lot about how I felt weak.
Yes.
What I found out after that conversation, because I was talking to John, and I'm like, I think I come off as like this total like wimpy kid. I mean, I was, but like I think I like talked about it too much. And he's like, no, it's relatable. Most kids feel weak.
I think he's right.
But a lot of kids do something about it. I never did anything about it.
Fuss had abs, so
he told me. He said I felt weak, but I worked out like a madman, and it actually for the first time made me feel not so weak.
100%. I agree with, and I would work out with like a lot of my friends were on the football team, and I worked out with a bunch of them and took it really, really seriously, and just couldn't believe the transformation. Like it was like that was something I just. You hear about it, people talk about it. Oh, you got to work out. It'll make you feel better. You'll look better. It's the most black and white thing on the face of the earth, and something I take incredibly seriously now. And like I could eat better. There's a lot of things I could do better.
Yeah.
But that's another thing that like my kids and I have bonded over, where form and exercises and what the value of fitness is and what we should be eating and all that stuff. And like that's another lesson where like if I disappear from the earth tomorrow, my kids are going to be healthy and understand how to live a healthy lifestyle. And that's something that hit me in like 11th grade and really influenced me quite a bit then and now for sure.
And maybe if it wasn't for that, we never would have bonded over our intermittent fasting.
That's
or even
right.
Connected over it. So
absolutely,
high school matters for even this relationship.
That's right. High school matters for everything. That's where it all comes back to.
So you talk a lot about not wanting to be pitied and not like my experience wasn't great in high school and I was not so wealthy. But
so hold on. My experience was good in high school. It was just again, it goes back to where your seats are. And right. I think it's something that in high school becomes more apparent because, and I know this is kind of like trivializing it or simplifying it, but the parking lot is really like the parking lot at Hewlett looks a lot like the parking lot at like a polo match. So, and it's really something to see. And that's something as a kid who doesn't have that, it is something that influences you for sure. And I was listening to I think it was your podcast with Kenny.
Yeah.
Talking about money and like that impact. And I thought it was interesting the way you said, like I never thought about it, meaning you as somebody who was on the means side of having means. And I just thought that was really interesting because I feel like not everybody in our school approached it that way. And I think we've had conversations where there were people, and this is something that has influenced me today, like with my kids, the kids who really bothered me in high school of anybody were the kids who acted like whatever they had was their doing, as if it wasn't dumb luck that they were born into a family with money. That really bothered me. And it did, like at the time, like it didn't influence anything I did, But from a parenting perspective, like how does being a kid influence your parenting? Whatever my kids have, we have had a million conversations about. You have what you have because we own it. You don't own anything.
Right.
You borrow and use everything that we buy. So if you for a second feel like you're imposing what you have on other people as like, I'm better than you, I will literally take everything you have and sell it tomorrow. Just make sure that conversation never comes out of your mouth. And my kids are super aware of that. These were all formative experiences. Like everything that was challenging or bothered me has become a formative, this is like going back to doing the opposite, has become incredibly influential in how we run our house. So for me, like all of those things, like those were all mental notes.
Wow. So you said it was interesting that I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Explain what that means to you.
So because somebody like me does think about it,
And did all the time.
I definitely did a lot. Like some of the stuff I was exposed to, like when I would go to people's houses, I was like completely fascinated. We were living in like a 3-bedroom apartment in Hewlett, and I would go like you know this because of, I'm sure some of your friends, some of these people houses are like, 6, 8, 10,000, like they look like hotels.
Yeah.
I have so many experiences of that, as a kid. And it was just like, it was incredible to me, but it was really eye-opening. Like there's a whole other way to live. And like, when I get moving, like I've got to do some work, and I don't know if I'm going to get that, but let me get some, like if I get a third of this, I'll be incredibly, incredibly happy and fulfilled. So it was a driver as much as it was, you look at it as a kid, you're like, oh, I don't have that. And that's, you kind of frame everything in.
Were you ever resentful?
Resentful, I think, is strong. Like there were times where like friends went to the movies and I didn't go to the movies because I didn't have enough money to go to the movies. And again, like, wow. But I think at the time, yes. I think as a kid, I probably was resentful. Jealous is probably reasonable to say. Like people going on vacations. The only place I went to Florida like maybe 2 or 3 times as a kid, and California once. And outside of that, we went nowhere. And I was actually more curious about all the experiences that I wasn't exposed to, because I have an intense curiosity about almost everything. Like I'm just really curious about going to other countries, traveling, I just want to do more things. And to not be able to do that almost, again, was like a bit of a motivator of, I didn't get to go skiing as a kid. Like we've been skiing 4 or 5 times as a family. And there is a degree of list creation to check the boxes to make sure my kids have a different experience. Not to justify that, hey, we did this, but to make sure that my kids have a childhood that has nothing to do with mine.
It's interesting because I'm thinking I think there's a major difference today than there was back when you were in high school. That's what I was, the social
100%.
media aspect, because I feel like it's so in your face when everyone goes away and 100%. They post these pictures, and I wonder how that would have impacted you as a kid.
Yeah.
Seeing, it's one thing to know they're away.
Right.
But to see what they're experiencing, especially a curious guy like you.
100%. It absolutely, being a kid today is so much harder than being a kid when we were kids. It's not even close.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, to your point about like me posting a lot, like if I went to your parents' house and said, hey, can you show me all the pictures of you guys growing up? I bet I'd be at your house for 11 and a half hours before the pictures ran out. It's like if you ask my parents the same question, that conversation's over in 90 seconds. Okay. And all the pictures are of Florida, and then the rest of the pictures they probably lost. So for me, like the pictures that we post are more about the memories. They're about the memories created. Like all of these snapshots of the experiences we've had as a family, which again, going back to, everything comes back to Seinfeld. It's the opposite of everything that happened in my childhood. Not because I want to prove anything to anyone. I just want to make sure that my kids have a childhood where someone comes home and they're like, holy shit, you had a great... Like the way Salteel talked about his childhood, couldn't stop talking about how great of a childhood he has. I want my kids to feel that they were loved, supported, and they had an experience that rounded them as human beings.
So high school really, it sounds like high school really had a profound impact on not just your life at the time, but to this day.
Incredibly profound.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you talked about sports, you talked about 11th and 12th grade transitioning a bit. Anything else like stand out as something meaningful in high school?
Cabaret night was pretty fun.
Right, you were the MC.
Yeah, Ronnie and I were MC senior year. That was kind of fun, and we were one of the people in the show was Jordan Gelber, who who's been a pretty significant actor. He's been in a lot of different things. I remember seeing him in The Sopranos, being like,
"Yes,
dude, I was in Cabaret Night with that guy. Where did I go wrong? He's next to Tony Soprano, and I'm here. I think I may have missed a beat, but yeah, that was super cool experience. I have a lot of fond memories of high school. Like high school wasn't perfect, but I have a lot of really good memories in high school. Like and you know, as talking about like kind of the maturity evolution and like the different pacing of people, that changed a lot too. And like I got exposed to different things as I got older, and like, you know, friends were going to parties, and like I would go to parties with them and like not drink, which was fine. And like that whole experience of getting involved with different people and being exposed to different crowds, it was a lot of fun to me. Like, and then, you know, like I worked in high school, so I worked with a lot of kids from Lawrence, and that was like, I didn't go to camp or anything. So like I didn't know people from other towns. Like I didn't know anybody from anywhere. Like people had camp friends, and like some of their friends went to Lawrence and some of their friends went to wherever.
What'd you do over the summers?
Typically I worked.
So you worked a lot.
Yeah, I did. I worked a lot. Like during school, like there were weeks where I'd work like 20 hours a week while I was going to school.
That's a lot.
But I liked it. It was a lot. But
because
I
that was for you to have spending money.
That was for me to have spending money.
Because otherwise you weren't getting it.
Correct. Yeah.
And you didn't have enough to buy a car.
No.
And you didn't need a car.
I mean, it would have been great to have a car, but
right.
I'm here. I survived. The first time I had a car was when I was 21.
And what was it like not having a car when all of your friends had cars?
It wasn't great
because everyone had cars, right?
Literally everyone had cars except for me, which was nice. No, like I had a couple of other friends that didn't have their own cars, but they had access to cars. But like,
and that was before Uber, so really you couldn't get around. Probably.
It was very challenging to get around. So like my friends were great about it. Most of the time they'd come pick me up, no problem, and wherever we were going, like they would take me. It was fine. But yeah, it was certainly frustrating not having a car in Hewlett. Was not the easiest thing in the world. Again, this is not like some tragic.
Don't worry about feeling not tragic. But tell me the worst thing about not having a car. Not worrying about how you're coming off like as woe is me.
Like somebody, so you know, people going out. Like the compounding factor was that I didn't live in the most convenient place. Like it's not like I lived in Hewlett or Woodmere.
Right.
So like coming to get me was a giant pain in the ass. So like if we were going to Docks or like we would go to the Lawrence Diner at night. Oh, what a great gyro.
The Sherwood Diner?
No, the Lawrence Diner.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like the generic brother.
Okay.
Down the block. Total dump, but man, their gyro was incredible.
Okay.
But you know, like having them have to bring me back and forth was a genuine pain in the ass for them. And they were great about it, but there were times where it was like, no, I can't get you. Like I had friends that lived in North Woodmere. Woodmere to almost Lynbrook, like you should need a helicopter. It's such an annoying drive. Like I didn't blame my friends. So sometimes that happened, or like I'd get dropped off like I was 8. And it's not the end of the world, but from a day-to-day like existence for that happening like every weekend or every other weekend, pretty annoying.
Yeah. So it was just annoying. It never made you feel insecure. It never.
Not really. Did it suck? Yeah, but like no one really cared because, you know, going back to like I could always stand on my own, like intellectually, personality-wise. Being funny compensates for so much. And makes up for it really makes up for anything. It's like a real life hack. Being funny.
Yeah.
It's gotten me to a lot of things in a lot of places that I don't like. I don't think my personality would have gotten me there without the humor.
How did your humor develop? Any remember?
My brother was the most sarcastic, dry. Like I don't know where it came from because again, it definitely wasn't my dad. And like that is something that we are both like when you're around us, you need to put on a helmet and take cover because if you step out of line, you are gonna catch heat.
Right.
I think it's my brother, and then I think it kind of it became like a bit of a survival mechanism from a differentiation standpoint.
And it probably got enhanced in high school. You probably got a lot of positive feedback in high school.
Oh, sure. And some of my friends were hysterical. Like really, like it was competition to go at it with them.
That's great.
So it was like muscle building. It was just one after another, and like they all had their different speed. And it was like facing a curveball and a fastball and a slider and like every pitch being thrown at you because everything comes to baseball too. That was really helpful too, is having really smart, funny friends. And I was fortunate where my friends were all smart. They were all funny and not like, you know, go to Harvard smart, but they were just really sharp-witted guys and they were challenging to deal with. And I was challenging to deal with and we would literally just go at it all day long.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was awesome.
So your health has been something obviously that is impactful and you talk about it, broadcast it. But I think it's interesting that it's kind of how our beginning of I'll put quote unquote friendship started.
Whatever this is.
Whatever this is. But it all started with intermittent fasting and health and dieting, and I know you had told me about your meat eating or lack of meat eating. I know you're not an expert, but I'm just curious, like for someone that actually does limit the things they eat. I read a book a while back called The Omnivore's Dilemma. I don't know if you ever read it.
I've heard about it. I haven't read it.
You know and the idea behind the book is that the dilemma that we have as omnivores is that we have unlimited choices.
Right, we're at the top of the food chain.
Right, but like we could eat whatever we want, and that makes us eat ice cream, Doritos, cheeseburgers, all that stuff, in addition to fruits and vegetables, whatever. So I just started keto, 4 months ago because someone told me that I like to experiment. Just like I experimented with intermittent fasting, and 10 years later, I'm still doing it. I experimented with keto, and 4 months later, I'm still doing it. But the thing I like about it, I'm curious your perspective on this because you introduced me in many ways to this new lifestyle, is it just limits the choices.
That's it.
And that's not a bad thing.
So that's part of it for me, is like you asked me about intermittent fasting and not eating meat. Putting a structure in place for me gives me guardrails that says just stay in this lane and you'll be fine.
That's how I feel.
It simplifies my life, and it's one less thing to think about. And I know that I need this amount of protein. I know where I need to get it. I know what my options are. And I know that like I'm not going to eat a cheeseburger, which leads to fries, which leads to a soda, which leads to I just consumed 1,400 calories for a meal, and suddenly I'm a fat slob again.
Right.
So like I feel, it is like the reinforcement, and it's kind of like going back to high school about like when you work out and suddenly you're like, oh my God, what happened? It's the same thing with eating. I know if I eat like crap, I'm going to feel like crap. There is a one-to-one connection there. I know it. I've seen it. I know what I eat, how my body's going to feel. So when I'm making those choices and grabbing for something, like, do I really want the impact of those potato chips? Is it enough of a reward? So like ice cream for me is enough of a reward where I'm like, I know I'm going to do a little time here, but I love ice cream. I love pizza. Like, I know we've talked about pizza 100 times also, like in our millions of conversations, what's a good pizza place? And like, I've done a bunch of these pizza tours, self-curated, where I find these places on Instagram because I have a phone and there's nothing magical about it. You can go find like the 8 or 10 or 12 best pizza places in New York and go to them, and they're incredible. Like, people will be like, how is Cirrus compared to La Industrie, compared to Cello, compared to John's Bleecker? They're all awesome. Go to any of them and they will all be incredible. That's a grenade I'm willing to sit on because I know how good it is. Whereas like potato chips, I just don't give a shit. Like potato chips are nothing to me.
Right.
But 4 slices of pizza, of good pizza, I'll eat that and I'll go to the chair for that because I know it's worth it.
So it's interesting when you bring that up because it reminded me that you are, again, for someone who I didn't know very well, you might have been the ratio between knowledge of the person and influence on me.
Right.
You win.
I have a disproportionate influence on some people, but I think it's just because that like everyone loves pizza. Everyone loves traveling. Like, I get questions about stuff all the time. Like, I know we both drive Teslas. Like, people will ask me questions about Teslas. There's at least 6 people who drive Teslas because I own a Tesla. Because like, if people ask me a question about something, like, I don't just say I like a Tesla. I'm like, here are the 7 reasons that I like a Tesla.
That's kind of what I was getting at. You, like me, are passionate about the things you're passionate about.
Right. And curious.
Yes, that's exactly right. And whether it's intermittent fasting, whether it's food. I mean, when I go to Florida, I text you, I remember I went to like Marco Island. Yeah. Where do I go for a lobster roll? And you sent me to Doug's.
And how was it?
And it was incredible.
Yeah.
When I go to Boca, where do I go for donuts? You sent me to Dandy Donuts.
Incredible.
When I need advice on pizza, I mean, I have other friends in Florida that that I know more, but for some reason
I have good food street cred.
And you're passionate about it.
100%.
Even the podcast. So if we could kind of tie it into the podcast.
Sure.
You're someone who, again, when I first started this idea, I didn't think Scott would ever like the podcast. You never even came to my mind.
Of course not. Why would I?
And yet you were engaged.
Sure.
Before we talk about the influence you had on my removing the question marks.
Yes. What a moment.
What did you like about the podcast? What was so significant to you?
I just think it's kind of like a character conversation in TV shows. Like, what do you like about Seinfeld? Like, I like the characters. I like this about George. I like this about Elaine. I like this about Kramer. I think you brought very relatable people on in different, like, kind of captured the different strokes of these places very effectively on a week-by-week basis. Like, there was somebody who was on, like, the top of the food chain, someone who was on the bottom of the food chain. It almost filled characters from my childhood. So like it was very relatable in that way where I could like I think you had one on with twins.
Yes.
And like so like
Hilarious.
it was really interesting stuff and it was all relatable because again I think the overlay between Great Neck and Hewlett, maybe not now, but when we like to me it made a lot of sense. It just all seemed connected and it's not overdone. It's not like this, eloquent, like ridiculously overproduced. It's content and it's real conversation about people that you can relate to or people I can relate to. And then when it expanded to like you had the kid on from this Israeli soldier, the IDF soldier.
Yeah,
That was amazing. There have been some real, kind of a lot of it light and relatable. So it was really it just connected with me. So I think that's like I'm not kissing your ass because again we're not
even talking about me.
We're not even friends. So I just thought it was really relatable, and I thought it was really interesting that you took the turn down the Hewlett path. I thought that was really smart from a again going back to the relatability. Like I don't know anything about Kenny Eisenstein. I know Scott Saltiel a little bit, but not really. I know Dave Siegel. Dave lives in Florida. Like the Dave Siegel Pearl Jam story isn't relatable to me because although Pearl Jam's probably the only concert I would ever go to because I don't really care about music.
Yeah.
So don't hate me for that. But like that story was like touching might be a little strong, but like that sort of sacrifice for a friend, that was really compelling stuff. And then of course the Cleve stuff was like, I mean, that's like giving me a scoop of ice cream. Like give me what I want. That's what I want. So, there's a lot of places where it provides value. And I also think your personality, I think, opens up people to talk. Like you just kind of throw something out there and then let people talk. It's not you dominating the discussion.
Right. Okay.
And how many times did I send you comments? Hey, listen, I just listened to this podcast. Here are 3 things that I thought were really interesting. And this is something to think about for next time. Like I probably did that
so many times. I wish you asked
times.
this. Why didn't you? 100%. And then that leads us to the final thing that you did.
Easily the most important. Honestly, this is probably one of the greatest things I've ever done for society. It's up there. Not adopting dogs or donating to shelters or donating to world causes.
So when I first had the idea, the whole point of the podcast was that we put people in boxes and there were these caricatures.
100%.
Like everyone has a certain role they fill in high school. And the point I was making was they're a lot more than that.
Wait, talk about that though, but you have to be specific about it because now all of the titles are changed. So for the newly indoctrinated, I need you. So I'm going to play you for a second. Can you explain that?
So I would so my first guest of season 1 was this kid who I was close with in high school who wound up being involved in a big cheating ring for the SATs.
So wait, I want to let you finish. That was incredible to me also. So going back to relatable, I saw the story on 60 Minutes and then you interviewed him. I said to Jill, I'm like, this podcast, we just watched this show. And we were like, I was watching that. I was riveted. So when I heard the podcast, I was like, holy shit, this is incredible.
That's great. Well, I love hearing that.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I'm almost positive I texted you that.
I think you did, yes. Yeah. So strategically, I put him as the first guest because that episode was a little different than the rest. It wasn't like talk about your high school and let's get deep. It was let's go over this crazy situation where you were the ringleader of an SAT cheating scandal in Great Neck.
Right.
Where you got arrested.
A national story.
A national story. So that was the first episode, and I called it the SAT cheater.
But with a question mark.
Well, before I had the question mark, I'm like, you know what? He wasn't just an SAT cheater. So let me make it not just the SAT cheater, but the SAT cheater question mark. Meaning, was he really just the SAT cheater or was he more than that?
So he was an SAT cheater. He may have been other things. And again, everything goes back to Seinfeld. There's a famous episode about the muffins and they call it top of the muffin to you. And so the emphasis is basically on the wrong syllable. So for the listeners, that was easily, I probably texted you about that 50 times before I finally knocked the soda machine over.
Well, what happened was in this last season when I started doing Hewlett High School people, I think it was John Chatzkamer that put
great
over the edge.
podcast.
Thank you.
Great podcast.
But it was the guy who loved high school or something or remembered high school, and you're like, you got to get rid of the question marks.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make sense anymore. Like I'm telling you, it doesn't make sense. And then I looked over the episodes and I'm like, you know what? It really doesn't make sense.
That's right. And that's the rocking the soda. Again, that is a famous Seinfeld comment. You got to rock the soda machine back and forth a few times to knock it over. It took me like 3 years to knock the soda machine over. And it's one of my greatest accomplishments.
So you were extremely influential, not just in my life, but in also the life of this podcast. So I imagine the people that care enough to think that was a ridiculous thing to put question marks at the end of each
Both
name.
of them? There's probably one or two out there like, oh, you know what? I'm glad they finally did that. And no one else cares.
Yeah, I mean, so to wrap up, I think, what do you think about this conversation? How do you think it went?
I mean, I think it went well. I'm always of the mindset of, does anybody care? But I mean, based on the feedback, it sounds like a lot of people do care, and you do get good feedback.
I don't know if people care about your story.
I have no idea.
The truth is,
I don't even care about my story.
Yeah.
I don't even care about my story.
I don't care if people
Right.
care about your story. I just know this was fun. We finally got to, we probably talked more in these, whatever time than we've ever talked in our entire lives, ever, not including the texts conversation for the past 15 years.
It is important as we wrap up to underscore the completely bizarre and unlikely nature of this podcast even happening, let alone the fact that we even have a relationship. It is unquestionably the most unusual, inexplicable relationship. Like, if I even explain this to someone, it's like a painful discussion because there's no logic. So wait, you guys started a relationship over intermittent fasting? You weren't friends in high school or college? It just doesn't make any sense, but it works.
It works. So if we could kind of tie it together to high school and just your experience, because you talked a lot about from your early childhood living in Connecticut with divorced family, moving to Connecticut, then moving again to Hewlett, and then transitioning into this new world where the dynamics of high school and middle school that every kid has to go through,
Sure.
You went through in your own way, and you so clearly talked about not only how it impacted you then, but also about how it literally led to how you are raising the next generation of Relkins.
100%.
If you can sum up your own experience with childhood into, because you talked so much about how it impacted, is there any overarching theme that you think defines your childhood and how it impacted you today?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that I am today was impacted by things that happened in my childhood. I mean, I think the experiences you go through, and some people kind of, I think they're more memorable for me because of the changes and the challenges that we went through. But they're also like the things that I wanted to change and I wanted to live to different outcomes were absolutely influenced by my childhood, my upbringing, the situation with my parents, going through elementary school, middle school, and high school in the environment that I did. There were so many things that taught me what I wanted. It's almost like the entire experience created my desire menu for the life that I wanted to craft for my family. And this was before Jill even showed up. And then to find a partner that understands the experiences you've gone through and the fact that she hasn't killed me in trying to implement a lot of them to form our family and to structure things has been, anybody who knows us is, looks at Jill as this sacrificial saint lamb to have to deal with me because I'm a lot. But as a team, we've put together, what I think is a really good structure. A lot of it based on my childhood, which thankfully she's been tolerant of. And it's 22 years in with 2 kids, it's been remarkably successful. We're very, very happy as a family. And you look back and say, well, do you wish it was different? I don't. I actually don't. So looking back now, I guess if you asked 13-year-old me or 15-year-old me, I'd probably have a different opinion. Like if you could have a Honda Accord or you could go on a vacation, I'd probably say something different. But now knowing what I know and knowing what the game looks like and where things happened, like a lot of things wouldn't have shaped the way they are if everything didn't happen. Like if my parents didn't get divorced and we didn't have everything we did as far as experiences as a family or lack of experiences, I don't know if I would have been as good of a parent and a husband as I am now, I think.
That leads me actually to my last question. And I had 2 questions, but I'm kind of going to combine it into one because you touched upon some important stuff that I think everyone can relate to. You talked about relatability. So you talked about where you're sitting in the stands of a game, and it dictates how you view that game.
Sure.
And then you also talked about how you have no regrets because everything that happened kind of led you to where you are today, and you're very happy where you are today.
Absolutely.
So my question really is, if you could change your seat, that's obviously, you already answered you wouldn't.
No.
But you're also creating a life for your kids where they have a different seat than you had.
Great point.
And how do you think that would have, A, changed your life, but B, is changing their life going forward?
So I think so one of the key areas that I think it really helps is eliminating the fear and concern of like what's going to happen next, like how stable are we, what's going on. We make sure that the kids have all the resources that they need to succeed. And I think all of this has formed that. So I think, is there a risk for, the fact that like I sat in, the second to last row in the upper deck and my kids they're not behind the dugout, but
First baseline?
I don't know. They're certainly in field level. So I think there certainly is a risk for that, but my kids have shown immense appreciation for what we have, and they start to ask questions about like when I travel for work, like, why do you have to go away? I'm like, this, and this, those all get paid for because I travel for work and I'm dedicated to my job, and my wife works at camp, and Jill has like 2 or 3 other part-time jobs that she does to keep busy, and it also helps us. Like, this all doesn't just happen. Like, this is not just appearing. This is all being created by us through our work, planning, strategy, and like me obsessing about things, probably to an unhealthy level, all of the time to make sure all of the trains run on time.
So it sounds like what you're saying is you're happy that your kids are not in the back row.
Yes, and I'm also happy that they're not in the dugout.
You're happy they're not in the dugout, but you're also happy that on field level, you could give them an experience like that with the caveat of, this is why your life is like this. And you're very conscious about making it clear to them that
this isn't a given. You're not owed any of this, and
don't take it for granted.
Exactly right.
That's the point.
That's exactly right. And our kids have been incredible about that over the years. And I've never heard any blowback about it, and not that I'm seeking it, but we spend a lot of time making sure our kids are good, decent people. They're not perfect. They're flawed just like anybody else, but they're good. They're on their way, and that's the goal. Like, we have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. They need to work. They need to create families. They need to go have Jewish children. Like, we've already had these conversations since the kids are young.
That's great.
So
good. I think we did a good job.
That's for the fans to decide.
These 2 non-friends.
That's right.
You are the first member of the class of 1993.
Do I get a trophy?
You're the first. You'll be like the student from the class of 1993. Question mark.
If you put a question mark next to this, I will lose my mind.
What do you think your title would be?
I honestly have no idea.
I'll have to listen back and see.
No idea. There's a lot of Seinfeld references.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is important.
The opposite.
That's right. The opposite of everything he ever was, or I don't know, something like that.
Well, this is great. I'm glad we did this. I'm glad it worked out in the most bizarre way because of this bizarre friendship.
It couldn't be more fitting. Not be more fitting. Yeah. The only way it would have been more fitting is if it was on a balloon ride. Because it makes no sense.
That's it. All right. Good work.
All right. Thanks.
Eric Relkin, good job.
Thanks, Rand.
I want to thank my guest and new friend, Eric Relkin, for not only this conversation, but for all the advice he's given me over the many years of our non-friendship. I also want to thank him because he's the only reason I was able to get my former guest, Mark Mattson, on the podcast. Not because he got him to do it, but because he gave me the confidence and the idea to reach out to him in the first place. So again, your influence lives on not just through this conversation, but through the podcast. If you like this episode, please rate and review it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. If you're new to High School Matters and this is your first episode, please go back and listen to old episodes. I promise, as Eric said, you'll find something relatable in each episode. Please follow us on the handle HS Matters Podcast and reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. I love feedback, good or bad. Send me a message. I always want to thank my executive producer, John Fuss, and I want to thank all of you for coming. I appreciate it and hope to see you soon.